Throughout the centuries, artists have had their inspirations. Da Vinci had his Mona Lisa, Van Gogh had his Starry Night, and Salvador Dali had the subconscious. Me, on the other hand, you already know what's going on. So hi everyone, I'm Ward, and welcome to my channel Wardrawsalot, and this week we're going to be drawing from inspiration. I truly believe the best part about having a sketchbook in front of you and the pencil right next to it is the ability to just pick up and go, and that's what I love about my sketchbook, is that I could just pick up and go and draw anything I want in there at any given time, and it doesn't always have to be an idea that I have to go off of, but just what inspires me in that moment. One of the beautiful parts of inspiration is that it can come at any time, any given moment, and the best thing is to truly try and act on it if you can, and not lose that spark. But we don't always get that opportunity, because sometimes, like, I'll be out driving and I'm like, oh, I should draw this, and then I get home and I completely forget what I was gonna draw or do or, write down or something, and it's like, man, I wish I would have kept that spark in my head, but, you obviously can't drive and draw, so it's like one example of that. This sketchbook spread was obviously birthed from inspiration. I haven't drawn dudes in like a good maybe week or two or something like that, and I kind of miss it, especially the dudes with booba. So of course my brain is like, hey, let's fill in that gap, that empty little hole that you have in your head that says to draw this, and let's go ahead and do that. So of course I start drawing, and I don't know what to put on the character, and I don't know what to give him as kind of like a look, especially because I'm very safe zoney when it comes to drawing characters, especially because, I put my dudes in pink, or like in a tank top or a crop top, low-rise jeans, the regular Ward staple, okay, the stamp of approval Ward. And sometimes I'm like, I should try and stray from that a little bit, just because if I'm thinking I do it too much, maybe you guys think I do it too much, right? And I don't want that to happen. So I tried to draw a different kind of outfit than I usually do, and in part this was kind of inspired by what I was watching. Now, the thing about media and me when I draw, so for reference, I was watching the Elvis movie that had came out like a good 2 years ago, and I really love the outfits, and the actor is really pretty. So a lot of that inspiration of what he was kind of wearing was kind of put onto this character, because that was the media that I was viewing. When it comes to watching something when I'm drawing, okay, this is very specific, and not everybody does this, of course, but I'm a little peculiar when it comes to these kinds of things. I don't like watching media that I already like when I'm drawing, okay? So I don't know about you guys, but I like to rewatch things, like, a lot. I'll watch the same thing over and over and over again, and until I'm like, okay, let's move on to the next thing to do that to, and then even then I'll go back to the thing that I've watched over and over again, okay? A lot of the time, if I watch that kind of media and I really like it and I consume a lot of it for a short amount of time, my art will be really, really like inspired by it, and I don't want that to happen, okay? And the reason is because although accept the fact that I use that kind of thing for inspiration, I don't want it to be a clutch, okay? Because that's a very dangerous thing. So if you, as an artist, want to draw something like a character, for example, and let's say you watch a certain show, like a bunch of times, you're gonna slowly see your character kind of develop into something that would be in that show, whether it's the clothing style, the character type, how the character looks, whatever. It definitely will take a massive pull, there we go, a massive pull from the show. I know that definitely happens with me, but I've seen it happen with a lot of other people, just like how certain shows will completely change the style of how somebody draws, right? Like me, for example, I didn't really draw that many buff dudes till I started watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure like a few years back. After I started watching JoJo's, it was over. That's all I ever drew. That's all I ever still draw, is just buff dudes, because that show completely altered how I look at art and what I feel like is something that I want to draw. Now, that doesn't necessarily make that a bad thing, right? That could be like a staple thing, like, oh, your art looks like this because of this. All of our arts is like a conglomerate of what we viewed and what we like, right? The reason why I do the buff dudes is because I really liked JoJo, or the reason why I do like longer hair on characters even from when I was younger is because I liked longer haired characters in shows, and I continue to kind of, put that in my art. And the same thing with the way they dress, the way they act as their personalities and stuff. A lot of these kinds of media will definitely have an effect on your own art. And maybe that's not everybody, right? Maybe I'm speaking for myself and a small select audience, but I really do feel like at some point what you view will affect what you do. And that's perfectly fine for some. Sometimes it's a good way to start some things, right? We want to draw a character, we don't know what we're going to do, and we're watching a show and we're like, oh, that clothing piece has inspired me to draw that onto a character, or the way something looks, or the certain style. Some shows take place in like the 50s, 60s, 90s, 80s, whatever, like all the fashions and stuff will sometimes inspire us to draw that onto a character. Again, nothing wrong with that. The problem, I feel, especially for me personally, is if I go ahead and sit down and watch the show and then do that all the time in my art, I really don't want to depend on that. I don't think anyone should depend on that. I think if you want to do that and it's like for a specific task, or like you want to have some fun and do that, then that's totally fine. But if you're kind of thinking about what should inspire you every single day to draw, or like all the time to draw, that's not really a good habit to have, because it's too much of a clutch, For me, what I did was, when I started watching anime again, because I stopped after like a long while, a few years ago, then I started again, then I noticed my style kind of looked like the anime that I was watching, and I was like, dang, this isn't what I'm going for. So I was like, let's go ahead and change that up to what I want it to be. So I stopped watching a lot of TV shows at the same time that I drew. And these are TV shows that I had already liked, mind you, or have already seen before and all that stuff. Like, all that kind of takes into a factor with me. So I had to kind of be cautious of that. So from now, or like from then on, I had decided if I'm gonna watch a show while I'm drawing, it's gonna have to be a brand new show. One that I'm already like not comfortable with, or have a personal connection with, so that when I draw, I can keep my own mind on my own piece of paper versus the media in front of me. And don't get me wrong, 100% I can have an inspiration from a new show too, but me, I'm very specific. I like to see things over and over again, and that's when I'll take inspiration from things that I've seen over and over again. So in my case with the sketchbook spread right here, you have his outfit is kind of almost like a 50s inspired. You have like the really low collar thing going on. Just to be frank, Elvis inspired 50s from that movie, not necessarily actual 50s, because I'm pretty sure it was a little different. But anyway, from that movie, you kind of have like really low cut V-cut shirts, and then you have like the pants that are almost like a dress pant thing going on. His hair is slicked back, the collar's popped up, like there's all these little factors that kind of play in here that kind of remind me of that movie, which I'm perfectly fine with because I haven't done it in a while. But again, not something that I should clutch on ever. For me personally, if you want to do that, go ahead. I support you, do whatever you want to do, but for me, yeah, I don't want to clutch on that. But it was nice for once to have inspiration coming from a source that wasn't from my own head. And it's also good to look at different inspiration just so you don't do the same thing all the time either, which is what I stated earlier. What I did an effort as well to kind of make a little bit of a difference from what I usually do. I love what I always do, don't get me wrong. But again, sometimes it's nice to change it up. I decided to go with a different kind of color scheme. So I took inspiration from something that I liked, but I went against my normal colors, which feels nice. I like this color combination. I did like a olive green kind of shirt with brown pants. The hair is kind of like a blackish brown. The skin tone is kind of like a light medium, I guess. Kind of like a light tan. I don't know how to put it. Maybe like an olive skin tone. I don't know. Something along those lines. But you get what I'm saying. I'm trying to stray away a little bit from what I usually do. I also have been like thinking about my art a little bit more recently because although, like I said, I've been loving what I've been doing and I've been getting better, I also want to try and change some things up. So for like the skin tone, sometimes I'm very wishy-washy with how I color, right? I love the way I color, don't get me wrong. What I want to do is kind of bring more color to the color, you know what I'm saying? Like more variation within skin tones. Like perfect example, I used a pinkish purple to kind of shade his skin here, instead of like a darker purple. I think that that's such a dangerous, like, dangerous piece of advice that people give to, like, beginner artists is use, like, a shade of purple to shade something. That doesn't always work. Please don't do that. Explore different shades and colors. I used a pinker purplish color, yes, that's true, but I feel like it would be different than if it was a darker purple color, and I feel like it kind of brought out the skin tone a little bit better as well. Sometimes we hear advice and it sounds good and it works for the time being, but after a while you're like, I don't know if I like doing this anymore, and that's exactly what happened to me. I don't really like using like a medium purple to shade unless like it's skin tone specific, so I like to find a certain kind of thing to shade with. So that's me personally. I've been looking at other artists for like how they draw and how they shade and color for almost like a technique breakdown. Not always is it like that it's a video format. Sometimes I look at a drawing and I discuss with myself how they've done something, shaded it, colored it, lined it, all that kind of stuff. For my lining, I kind of want to work on that a little bit more too, right? Because again, I've been looking at other artists and I've been seeing how they line, and I've been thinking maybe I should try and line it differently as well. I think maybe if I just play with a little bit more variation or different kinds of pen strokes or even different kinds of pens being used, then I'm gonna see how it works. Am I necessarily gonna do all this all the time, like changing up things? Not necessarily. It's whatever, again, inspires me in the moment and whatever I feel like. It's my art, obviously. I can change it and how it looks at any given moment and any time, but there's also like a natural progression of things. Like you could see an artist is getting better because they're doing things a certain way, coloring it a way, lining it, all that kind of stuff. So I think this is just kind of part of my natural progression when it comes to my art, and that's normal. Everyone's art style kind of just changes over time and becomes almost a different entity after a while. And honestly, I'm fine with it. Things change and things come and go, and I really like that things change for the better and hopefully not for the worse, right? So, hopefully I'm not drawing and it looks even, shittier than before, because that would make me cry. Another thing that I really wanted to do this time was, for some reason, I was inspired by a fat cat, right? I was just thinking about him, so I was like, let's give this character a nice fat cat. So he looks kind of like, not necessarily cold, but he doesn't look very warm or inviting or anything. He just looks like a really handsome guy, but a quiet one. So I gave him a fat cat to like kind of bring the warm, loving side out of him, which is why I drew that little guy of him holding the cat and with like little hearts around him, because I feel like he kind of has that animal bring out the personality in him. I feel like this for a lot of people. They're very quiet or something, and then when they're with their pet, they kind of like stand out, or they become like this happier person because cats or other animals make a lot of people happy. So I just wanted to draw a nice little fat loaf of a cat, a little fat fuck. I just wanted to draw him because he looked so sweet and cute, and then I was like, I'd really like if this character would have like a little companion. Especially, I don't think I've ever drawn like a pet with a character before, so this is again a nice little change of pace where I'm feeding more of the personality into the character by giving little accessories on the side, like something of an animal or a cat. I don't necessarily know if like a white cat with orange spots exists. It probably does, right? Somewhere in the whole world. But I thought that would be a nice little contrast between the green and the brown to bring out some nice color to the page. Even though it's a little bit of it, it's still like there and it kind of pops. So yeah. Overall, for the sketchbook spread, I really love how he came out and the cat, and I love that this time I actually used inspiration, and that I've come so far to not use it as a clutch. He looks like really handsome to me, like ridiculously handsome. Like I have to look away from the paper because I'm like, stop, you're looking at me. He's like really pretty in my opinion, and I honestly had a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks for watching, and remember I love you. Bye.